What's going on, everybody? I hope you guys have been doing okay the last couple of months with our current world situation making things complicated for everybody. Honestly, myself, between what's going on, me busting my ass to keep a job in the midst of all this and having moved into a new space, I haven't really had the energy to work on any new videos until right about now. So here we are. So in case you didn't already notice, this isn't a Gundam Breaker 3 review, which I promised you in my last video, which was like 6 months ago, but instead of something a little different. See, back in 2018, Sega dropped a reveal trailer for Streets of Rage 4, a beat-em-up series of theirs which they haven't had a new release for since the Sega Genesis back in 1994. Holy shit was I excited for this one, because I have fond memories playing this series back when I was a kid with my uncle on his Sega Genesis. So needless to say, as soon as the reveal trailer hit for this game, I was instantly excited for this one to come out. So fast forward a little more than a year and a half, almost 2 years later, and next to no news comes out for this game aside from some character reveal trailers and the word that the composers for the original games were back on for the project, which already had created a little bit of hype for the game because it was saying that Sega cared about the history of this series and were reverent enough about it to care about what they were putting out for the fans since they just made such a big announcement. And then comes April 17th, a little more than a week after they announced that there would be a whole retro mode for the game featuring classic sprite characters from Streets of Rage 1 through 3, along with a retro filter to give the game a whole classic look. They drop a trailer on us showing that the release date for the game was April 30th, not even 2 weeks removed from that. And as soon as that happened, I said to myself, I know what must be done. So as soon as April 30th hit, I spent the better part of the week following the release playing this game on stream and constantly hyping myself up so that I could get to this project. So without further ado, here is my review for Streets of Rage 4. Much like most beat-em-ups in the era it's from, Streets of Rage had never really been first and foremost remembered for its story, so I'll do my best to condense the story of this game as much as I can, as it only really progresses mostly in the cutscenes starting and ending its respective stages. But before that, I'll start with the game's general setup, along with some tidbits the game doesn't really go out of its way to explain. Streets of Rage 4 takes place 10 years after the last game, and in that time of peace, Axel Stone, one of the series' mainstays, retired from the police force and has lived in solitude out in the wilderness. Blaze Fielding, however, stayed on the force, but ultimately got a dishonorable discharge because she punched a police commissioner over an ethics dispute and refused anger management classes. She now works as a dance instructor, and she still keeps her finger on the city's pulse. Due to her diligence in the matter, she catches wind that a new syndicate is forming and starting to take over town, so she begins to get the team back together. This new syndicate is run by the Y-Twins, children of the former villain Mr. X, who just want to take over the city and get some good old-fashioned revenge for old daddy's sake. Axel joined with no questions asked, and was followed up by newcomer Cherry Hunter, the daughter of series OG Adam Hunter, who's also the niece of Skate Hunter from 2 and 3. When she calls on Dr. Zan from Streets of Rage 3, the call is instead answered by Floyd E. Raya, Zan's new apprentice who's rocking some bitchin' cybernetic arms that Zan made for him after a work accident cost him his own. So he takes Zan's place out of duty to his new master who helped and rehabilitated him. And now with the team assembled, they take to the streets. No pun intended. After making their way through the main streets of Wood Oak City, they find the first boss, Diva, out in the train yard. After handling her and asking for some info, Diva simply tells them that the new syndicate is powerful and they shouldn't oppose it, blah blah blah, when all of a sudden the group is captured and brought to stage 2, the prison. Wondering why the cops are opposing them, they immediately break free and fight their way up to the commissioner's office to get some answers the old-fashioned way. Just then, you come face to face with Mr. Y, who introduces himself by assuming, stupidly I might add, that he can buy you out of beating his ass. And when negotiations break down, the team jumps out of the window into a nearby river and wash up on a boat full of syndicate goons. After making your way through the boat and beating the next boss, Nora, she decides to pull a fucking Kodak Black and say,
"Let me drive the boat."
And thus we end up on the nearby pier. where we're eventually blocked off by fucking Ronda Rousey, Estelle, and end up surrounded when out of nowhere we get saved by Adam Hunter in one of my favorite comeback entrances ever in video games. I'm gonna go ahead and slide all that shit off to the side real quick because I want to talk about my boy Adam Hunter real quick. Not only have they made him playable for the first time since the very first game, but in the year 2020, this is what we call a fucking glow up, people. I love everything about this scene, man. He has a heartfelt reunion with the squad before telling them to get out of there so he can handle business, and then he even follows up by telling Cherry Daddy's gotta talk to the lady. Meanwhile, I'm just sitting here like, yeah, you talk to that lady, Adam, you slick son of a bitch. Seriously, this man hopped fresh out of the 90s looking like he's ready for the next GQ cover. You make your way out through the sewers next, where you run through a biker bar and fight another throwback boss, Barbin, steal a bike, and head straight for Chinatown. There, you run into another throwback character, Shiva, who used to be the right hand of Mr. X. After a round with him, he informs you that he's actually not very fond of the Y twins, and found out that they've created a machine that can control people's minds through sound waves, and points you to their hideout, which could not be more obvious. Seriously, where the fuck have we been looking the whole time? And you hop onto the next stage, which is riding on top of a train. You're cut off again by Estelle, who brought the commissioner along for backup. You end up fighting again and trying to bring Estelle to reason when all of a sudden Mr. Y shows up in a helicopter and pulls a fucking nemesis by blowing up the train with a rocket launcher. The train wrecks and you end up at an art exhibit where the Syndicate goons have literally nothing better to do than admire a golden chicken. Hey, what can I say, artist objective or whatever, I ain't joking. Here, you run into two color palette swap divas named Bio and Rhea, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I swear these are references to Beyonce and Rihanna. Why? I don't know, reasons I guess. I stopped asking questions a while ago. After beating them, you bust through the walls and end up in a sauna within the Y Tower and fight your way up to the top of it where you run into Max Thunder, one of your comrades from Streets of Rage 2, but oh no, he's mind controlled and now serves at this stage as boss. After beating him back to his senses, you're greeted by Miss Y for the first time, who offers little conversation before she turns the mind control machine on you, only to be interrupted by Estelle, saving you in the process. Just then, Mr. Y shows up to extract Miss Y, saying they have a concert to catch which tips off Cherry. She realizes that there's a musician, DJ K Washi, who's having a concert tonight, and that must be where they plan to unleash the machine because the concert is going to be broadcasted everywhere, so the group gives chase over the city rooftops. You make it to the concert and find DJ K Washi, who apparently can turn sounds into key blasts or whatever, and beat him down, leaving the Y Twins' plans dead on arrival, and take an elevator down into an airplane hangar where Mr. Y is trying to make his escape. You fight through the hangar, into the plane while it takes off, and face off with Mr. Y in the cockpit. When you get the upper hand on him, he says fuck all and shoots the controls, sending the plane to crash while he makes his escape in the process. The plane ends up crashing on Y Island, the final stage, where the twins are hiding out in a castle complete with stained glass windows of their old man, and you end up facing off with Miss Y when you power through the castle. But she doesn't let you finish her off that easily and books it, leaving you to follow her into this courtyard where Mr. and Miss Y team up against you, and they don't really seem to change up their gimmicks much. And about halfway through the fight, Mr. Y just jumps off the cliff. I'm not exactly sure why. Okay then. Technology is such an incredible thing, you know? 10 years made such a big difference. We went from fighting a guy with a bunch of goons and a Tommy gun to fighting a teenager on a fucking Megazord! But I digress. The fight from this point on goes one of two ways. Either you beat Mr. Y first and let Miss Y take over and switch up the mech's attack patterns for the second half of the fight, or you beat Miss Y first, then take care of Mr. Y to make the mech easier to fight and by extension the fight as a whole. Either way, it all ends the same way. You take them down, they get arrested, everybody goes about their business, and we all live happily ever after. The end. Hell, Adam even gets to schmooze on Estelle while he gets a medal, you sly bastard. Either way you look at it, the story is pretty serviceable, I want to say. There's nothing terribly offensive about it, but there's nothing to, rave about either. I wouldn't write home about it. But, at the end of the day, I got the job done, and, yeah, that's pretty much it. Moving on, it's finally time to talk about the gameplay. In that regard, if you've ever played a beat 'em up, you should know what to expect here. You have your basic commands, attacks, specials, grabbing and jumping, as most of the original games did. You also have the series' patented star moves, basically get out of jail free supers that are only usable as long as you have stars. You can find a few of them throughout each stage, so make sure to use them wisely. Other kinds of moves are your standard back attacks, so enemies can't get the drop on you, and you can throw weapons. A new trick in this game for the series is that when you throw a weapon, oftentimes it'll ricochet off of that enemy, and you can catch the item, saving valuable combat time if your reactions are good. Another thing here is that most beat-em-ups of this nature exchange health for your special attacks, and while that's still true, there's an added mechanic to the formula where your sacrificed health turns green, and stringing hits afterward will recover it, but it can be still lost if you're attacked, making you feel safe in using the specials but open to punishment if you abuse them. You can wall bounce enemies and juggle them to extend your combos, and the bigger the combo, the bigger score bonus you receive, which is definitely useful because you gain extra lives at score milestones so that you have something to work for other than showing off to your friends. As for the characters, Axel and Blaze are almost exactly the characters you remember them to be for the most part, serving as the most classic characters in this iteration, standard in both their mobility and their movesets. Cherry, however, fills in the blank spot that Skate left behind, having all the speed and none of the power. She's also the only character in the modern roster who runs, so she's definitely the character you want to use if you need a little pep in your step. Also, I dig her aesthetically. She runs around with a guitar on her back, all of her specials use it to generate electricity too. Something about her gives me a Scott Pilgrim vibe, and I'm sure that was intentional for the newbies to the series. Floyd is the game's heavy hitter to fill in for Max, and due to his cyber arms he's got a few extra tricks thanks to Dr. Sand. He's by far the slowest, but more than makes up for the speed and raw power, and his arms also give him great reach, as he can extend them and grab enemies from a distance. I personally found a lot of nuance to his archetype, and so he's definitely more useful than he seems, so I always have fun when I use him to switch it up. Oh, and he also took a page from Iron Man for his star move. Adam is the classic character who got the most love. Given that he came from the one game where none of the characters had specials, the developers took the time out to retool him and bring him up to speed. He doesn't run, but unlike the other OGs of the series, he has a dash step that helps to make him very mobile in a pinch, and he can also follow up with a heavy double punch, and he's got some great looking specials that cover a variety of range. My personal favorite, if you couldn't already tell. That aside, there are some odd design choices, I want to say, that feel unnecessarily dated. For starters, you can't jump or dash up and down or diagonally, something that other modern beat-em-ups have been doing for a while, such as the aforementioned Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and they opted to make the game 2-player online co-op and 4-player local? Now look, benefit of the doubt to the developers and all that, Streets of Rage was always a 2-player beat-em-up, and I'm sure they made this choice a while back before everything went to shit out here in the world today, but the way things are in this current social situation we all found ourselves in, when am I ever going to get 4 people together to play this game for a 4-player session after all this? That's more of a personal problem, I'm sure, but I'm also sure that you might have heard people talking about this already. It is what it is though. The game's easy enough to play with 2 people, and while there are a number of higher difficulties, I'm sure there's little loss there. The last thing to note is that there's a bevy of unlockable characters in this game, all lifted straight out of the originals, bringing the total roster up to 17 characters. Adam himself is unlocked after stage 4, and the rest are unlocked via a lifetime EXP meter from playing, so it definitely adds a ton of replayability, not gonna lie. I personally already beat this game no less than 12 times before I bothered to make this video, but that's also because no mission lasts more than, say, 10 minutes? The whole game is a 2-hour affair on standard difficulty, so not very long, but also not unlike most other beat-em-ups. There are exceptions to the rule though. My favorite thing in this game is its presentation for sure. All the environments and characters were hand-drawn and animated, giving it a little bit of a personal touch in my opinion. It shows how much these devs wanted to bring it into a new age after having been gone for so long. All the characters look great, quirks and all. I read that the animators drew over 1,000 frames for the main cast, as well as over 300 to 400 for the villains, which I feel is impressive to say the least. All of the characters sound great to boot, with the modern cast all having been given some modern voice actor treatment, though aside from the one single line, none of the cutscenes got any of that love. Seems like a waste, but no use crying over it. The game's cutscenes all have this comic book feel with the way the cutscenes are presented, and they don't overstay their welcome in any of the scenes. It all looks the part, and as I mentioned in the beginning, the game offers retro filters to give the game the classic feel, which also helps the classic characters blend in a little better. It ain't perfect, but I applaud the effort. Lastly, the music. This one was a bit of a point of contention for me in regards to how my thoughts differ from others. While there has been tons of praise online, you catch the odd goofball comment here and there saying how the music doesn't match up to the originals, and honestly, I don't care that much. This soundtrack is all I've listened to for the last week and then some. If you want to say these composers didn't do their thing with this music, I'm gonna need you to name me a song that you've been jamming to for the last 26 years from the old games that isn't Go Straight or Dreamer without fucking Googling it. And if you can't, then leave me the fuck alone. I just want to enjoy the work these guys put in because this shit bumps. It took a long time to get this, and I mean a really long time. When Streets of Rage 3 came out, I was only 2 years old. Think about that. But I want to give my thanks to Emu, Lizard Cube, and Guard Crush Games for reviving a series everyone thought was dead, save for all the Sega collections and that one time Axel was in Project Cross Zone 2. I commend your work, seriously, and I hope for more content for this game moving forward. Adults get rude. And before we get started with goodbyes and all that good stuff, I want to give thanks out to my boys Izzy, Migsby, Joestar, Gears. You guys are all great. Thank you for playing with me over the last week on this one and helping me collect so much footage. Gave me a lot to work with. You guys are great. But now we're starting to come to the end of the video here, and I tried not to bloat the entire thing too much, but it's like hard to explain. I had a lot more energy coming into this project than I have for others in the past, and it's just rewarding for me to be able to finally get this thing out. So I thank you guys for taking the time out to watch. We have officially reached verdict time though, and for me, in my humble opinion, Streets of Rage 4 gets an 8 out of 10. And I humbly thank you for, being patient with me while I get out these projects, and stay tuned for the Gundam Breaker 3 review. That will be coming sooner than later. Now that I am fully back in editor mode, I just gotta get some stuff together for that one. Just look forward to it. But if anything, I'll see you guys next time. Like and subscribe if you like the video, and I'll catch you later. Bye bye.